What's up guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at JBL's PRX912 FRFR, thanks to the guys at Zzounds. So they sent me this thing to check out for a little while, both here in the studio and on stage with my band, so that I can get a really good understanding of what a more premium FRFR kind of sounds like on stage compared to the other FRFRs that I've gigged with. So a big thanks to those guys for making this video happen. Okay, so JBL's PRX line is their mid-tier powered monitor, which sits between the lower priced Eon series and the more premium SRX top tier series. But despite being priced in the middle of their lineup, it is also priced to compete with some of the better monitors on the market, most noticeably QSE's K-series monitors. Okay, so now that you've heard what this thing sounds like, the recording setup is exactly the same as how I did the Fender FR12 and my ZLX second generation monitor review, in that I've got the Aston Origin microphone about 3 feet away from the monitor, kind of pointing right at it, and I've got the camera sort of like hovering right over where the microphone is physically located. And I guess I should also mention, if you're not familiar with the whole FRFR microphone thing, is that you typically don't mic up an FRFR its job is to just amplify something that is already mic'd up, but I'm giving it the good old college try here, and I think I've got a pretty good representation of what this thing sounds like here in the room. So as you can see, I've busted out the good old Charvel here. It's got the Doug Aldrich bridge pickup and the it's got the Saturday Night Special Duncan neck pickup. It's going into the Boogie, and it's going also into the aux box, which is feeding a DI line-out signal into the back of the PRX here. And this setup is very representative of how I typically run my hybrid setup on stage. I typically don't use the aux box if I'm using the Mesa. I do if I use any other amp, because the Mesa has a direct out that goes into usually the aux stomp and the quad cortex for effects, and then it splits going into whatever FRFR is behind me, and also into the house. So I have a very good control over the sound, both behind me on stage and what goes to the PA. Okay, so now that you've gotten to hear it here in the studio, let's go over some of the features of how it compares to the QSCs that our band mainly uses, which are the K12.2s, and we also have a K10.2, which both myself and our singer have gigged with many times. Also, how it compares to the second generation Electro Voice ZLX12 FRFR that I reviewed earlier last year, which also cost about half what this PRX costs. All right, so if you're a guitar player and you use either a modeler, a profiling device on stage, or if you're like me where you use an analog amp with some sort of digital speaker simulation to run cabless, you're probably familiar with most of the FRFR products marketed towards guitar players, like the Headrush, the Fender units, the new Tone X unit, the Line 6 units, maybe even some more of the premium FRFRs from company like Laney and Mission Engineering, Friedman. But it seems like more often than not, the powered monitors sort of get pushed aside out of the conversation, despite being some really excellent choices in this space. Now, I get that most guitar players probably don't have this JBL on their radar, but in this video, I'm going to go over the features that I think really do make it an attractive product for players who want a more premium sound reinforcement option than some of the others that I've mentioned. Now, the first difference that sets this thing apart from the other kind of guitarist FRFRs is that it has two inputs. For some of you, that's really not a selling feature, but if you want an FRFR to do double duty, being able to run both your instrument and your vocal mic, which is something that a lot of us who do acoustic gigs need. Some FRFRs do not have that, but almost all powered PA speakers do. The second big difference is that this thing has 2,000 watts of power on tap, which is quite a bit more than some of the other FRFRs on the market. The third thing is the ability to use a phone app with the speaker via a Bluetooth connection. Now, the app is not required to use the speaker, but it definitely does unlock some really nice quality of life controls. So let's talk about that for a second, and I will be putting screenshots of the app kind of like up on one of the sides of the screen, probably over here, so that you can see some of the things that you can do with that app. So like quite a few of the new powered monitors, this one has Bluetooth connectivity, and the app lets you fine-tune various settings without really having to dig through the little menu on the back of the monitor, which isn't too bad to work with. I quickly realized how helpful a phone app was back with the second generation ZLX, because during soundcheck, I could kind of kick off a guitar loop and then jump off stage, go out into where the crowd would be, and then use my phone app to adjust the output level, make EQ tweaks to get it sitting just right in the room. It's really handy, and just like with the ZLX monitor, the connectivity is fast, it works every time, and it stayed synchronized the entire night. Now, compared to the smart features on the ZLX though, the JBL is a bit lacking, but I also think that this speaker is aimed at a different buyer than the Electro Voice. Features such as the per channel effects and compression, having a dedicated FRFR EQ mode, those are some of the things that you would traditionally set up and operate from the mixer, but as someone who exclusively uses their FRFR independently from the mixer, losing those features was noticeable, and specifically from an acoustic performance where you might want to have a little bit of reverb, maybe some compression, maybe even a little delay on your guitar or vocals, something like that, and you don't have a mixer I mean, not all mixers have reverb built into it or delay or anything like that. And some of the ones that do are pretty much junk. I don't think any of the budget PA heads will have any sort of delay or anything like that. So the ability to control that from an app kind of built into the monitor is really handy, and I was a little bit disappointed that this unit didn't have that. What this does have is a very powerful and flexible EQ section, which if you're used to one of those PA heads that has, you know, maybe 3 or 4 knobs for each channel for the EQ, this has significantly more control over how your EQ sounds. So at this price point, I feel like the Smart App features are maybe a little bit half-baked compared to the ZLX, but you still get a nice bonus when you compare it to the QSC, which doesn't have any smart features at all, while still being right at around that, you know, $1,000 price point. So it's better than nothing, but compared to the much less expensive ZLX, I think it probably could have had a few more things there in the app to play with. Now, one neat trick that it does have is automatic feedback suppression. Now, this can be super helpful for acoustic performances where you really don't want any feedback. But for our show, a loud rock show, I 100% need feedback for several of the songs that we play, so I didn't really mess with that. Speaking of playing songs, it's time for the post-to-gig report. So if you guys caught my Instagram post, you will have seen this guy on stage with the Mesa, and after some initial frustrations, I guess you could call it that, here in the studio, figuring out the balancing act between the channel gain and the channel level and the overall output, I was able to get a very nice, loud, powerful, and hard-hitting sound on the stage. So by frustrations, I mean that the speaker has a pretty aggressive distortion once it peaks and clips. But you do have an LED on the back to indicate when the peaking is happening when it turns red. But if you have the gain, which is not to be confused with the actual level of the channel, if you have the gain of the channel too high, the speaker distorts pretty badly when it clips. So there was a little bit of trial and error getting the channel gain set to where it needed to be kind of right below that clipping point, and then using the master output for the speaker to get the overall decibel output where it needed to be. The gain and the channel volume are pretty closely tied together, so you do have to get that balance just right between those two to get the signal just where you want it in terms of your headroom before it starts to clip. They give it kind of like your typical line level versus mic level setting, but instead of an either or choice, it's sort of a variable control that you can adjust. The separate gain and channel output controls are kind of new to me, so that was really the main learning curve that I had with this unit. And also, despite the fact that the physical speaker controls have the gain menu, I really wasn't able to figure out how to adjust the actual gain level from the physical controls. I had to use the phone app. Now, it really wasn't a big deal. I mean, I kind of wish it was just one knob to set the output and had the line or mic level setting in the menu. But once I got it figured out, it really was kind of just set it and forget it. Like, look, I'm not a sound engineer, and I'm willing to bet that most of you guys aren't either. Just give me one knob. Turn it up for loud, turn it down for not loud. That's kind of how my brain operates, and this was a little bit tricky. Next thing, I don't know what RMS wattage is. I don't know what that means. I don't know what the RMS wattage of the 1000 watt ZLX unit is. I know that this thing has an RMS wattage of 1000 watts and a peak wattage of 2000, which I believe is roughly the same as the QSC K12s. And just based on how clean and hard hitting the low end on this thing is, the extra wattage from this compared to the ZLX was very noticeable. There's a lot more punch from this thing than the ZLX, and even more of just a huge low end, really low resonant deep end punch. It's got more of that than my Splon 412 cabinet, which is crazy. And using the phone app, I was able to set up an EQ curve that shaved off some of those really resonant low-end frequencies that probably would have been fighting the bass player on stage, and pushed the mids just a little bit and shaved off a little bit of that really upper high-end frequency to get it sitting just right and comfortably in the stage mix. Now again, using the phone app made this process a breeze, and it saved me the trouble of having to sort of go back and forth from the stage out to where the dance floor is, making adjustments, going to hear how it sounds and things like that. I mean, normally I'm making tweaks either on the EQ of the amp or the quad cortex, and then going back out to hear the changes, and if it's not right, then I got to go back and do it again. So it was a great experience on stage, and although I wasn't really feeling like the ZLX lacks power to be heard, far from it actually, both this PRX and the QSC with their higher wattage, they hit so much harder and with more authority and just have an overall cleaner sound than the ZLX speakers do. And you can definitely tell that they can just handle pushing sound way harder without really trying to do so as hard as the ZLX or that Fender FR12. It's like they're just not breaking a sweat. They're just sort of doing it effortlessly. Whereas the ZLX and the FR12, you can tell that they're really working. All right, time for a conclusion. And who do I think that this unit is for? So by now, after going through the features and the price, you probably have a good idea if this is something to consider or not. If you only need one input for guitar and you have no interest in using it for both guitar and vocals, I would honestly probably pass on this. If you're playing small venues or just looking for something for your rehearsal space, the extra power from this unit compared to the FRFRs with 1,000 watts or even less, you probably won't utilize the extra power from this and would probably be better suited getting one of the less expensive units. If you play bigger clubs or you have outdoor gigs and you really need a strong sound for a loud stage and you need the second input and you feel like the smartphone app features would benefit you, in my opinion, those are the three big criteria that really make this a standout product for a gigging guitar player or a bass player. If you really don't care for the smart app stuff, but you do still need a 2-input unit with a lot of power, I would maybe recommend saving $100 or so and going with the QSC K12.2. It's an industry-leading speaker for a very good reason. This thing, however, absolutely hangs with it and definitely keeps up and punches just as hard, just as clearly, and in terms of just making guitar sounds on stage, I think that the extra EQing app features of this unit really do kind of give it a nod over the QSC. If, however, you do want the features of the smartphone app and you don't need to be crazy loud, I really think that the second generation ZLX12 is a really great FRFR, and it's only like $550, and it undercuts several other of the popular sort of guitar player FRFRs on the market. Like, I honestly can't stress enough of how great of a product that new ZLX is for guitar players who don't really want to spend a ton of money and they want a very flexible product. If you only need one input and you don't care about the smart features, I still think that the ZLX is probably the best bang for the buck FRFR on the market. But I also really did enjoy the Fender FR12 on stage with its amp-like appearance and the physical control and tone knobs. And I also think that the more premium offerings from Friedman, Barefaced Audio, Mission Engineering, and those guys, they are still probably worth considering as well. Now, I know I mentioned the JBL's lower tier Eon series, but at the same $500 to $550 price point, I think that the extra app features of the ZLX still make that a more attractive product. Like, the Eon appears to have the exact same smart features as the PRX, but just without as much power. So kind of in conclusion, I think depending on where your current needs are and potential future needs land in that matrix of features that I've laid out, the PRX may or may not be the best unit for you. For $1,000 though, you get an extremely loud, very clear sounding speaker with 2 inputs, smart app connectivity, great build quality, and lastly, the PRX units, as far as I can tell, have an industry-leading 7-year factory warranty. The QSC stuff is, I think, 6 years. The Electro Voice, I know, is 5 years. And I think most of the other FRFRs in that sub $700 price range are between 1 and 3 years, maybe. So yeah, that's about it. I'm curious if you guys use FRFRs at home, at practice, or on stage. Which one are you using? And how do you like it? And what are some of those features that led you to your purchase? Let me know down there in the comments. I love talking about this kind of weird nerdy stuff. I think that each of us has a slightly different use case, or sometimes hugely different use case. So it's nice that we have so many options on the market. Like, as a gigging musician, bringing you guys these real world stage experiences with these products, like these units, these FRFRs, they play such a huge role in the stage experience and the performance kind of as a whole, in a way that most guitars, amps, and modelers and things like that, they really can't match. And it seems like the segment for these types of products is only heating up more and more as the digital units not only get better and better sounding, but also more affordable. All right, that is going to wrap up this review for the JBL PRX912 powered monitor. Another big thanks to the guys at Zzounds for sending me this unit out to try, to show you guys, and there's definitely going to be some more FRFRs coming on the channel, so be on the lookout for those. And if you found this content helpful, consider subscribing if you haven't already, to help my channel grow and to help get these videos out there to more new viewers just like yourself. And if this is a product that you're interested in checking out, I will have an affiliate link down there in the video description, and as well as links to all the other stuff that I use to make these videos happen. All right, I will catch you guys in the next video. Take care.